Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it is the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert. Your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we got a great show lined up for you today. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate all the listeners and all the support. Whether you are watching us on video via Patreon or you are listening to the audio version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, wherever, you can also catch all of that info at www.gearconvoy.com. There's a tab for the MOA broadcast and books and stuff like that, and that will give you all the information and links to get everything. So, thanks for joining us today. Got a great show. Just a couple of show highlights for this episode. Possible airline discrimination against fat people. Uh-oh. I'm not making this up. These are actual headlines, and, well, the headlines are mine here, but these are actual news stories we're going to get into. A woman threatens to disembowel and kill President Donald Trump. Woman loses an arm to a lion in a runaway raging lion attack at a zoo. And finally, a crazed Waffle House sex attack. Stay tuned, folks. We got a great show lined up for you today. So you'll have to be patient with me today. I am doing this via tablet and my computer here in the Gear Convoy / Wilson Knife Shop, where I usually film this. So if you're a new listener, if you hear the choo-choo train in the background, we're a couple hundred meters away from train tracks out here in the hills of Oregon, and we'll get some of that noise coming through the background. But my printer, and this is a gripe, I swear to goodness, I hate this. This is a gripe of mine. My printer, I was going to print out the show notes in preparation for today's episode, and it refused to let me print out any more pages of anything. And I'm like, okay, that's odd, because I've been keeping an eye on the ink, and I still have plenty of black ink. But this particular printer will not let you. It's not one of those ones where they totally gouge you, where you have to have all of the ink cartridges in stock. But it uses a certain amount of yellow ink whenever it does some function, cleaning the print heads or whatever else. So if you run out of yellow ink, you can't just print black only, just black and white pages. So I spent almost an hour trying to figure this out before the stupid little pop-up box told me what was happening. And then I'm like, great, how am I going to do it? I don't want to do it on the computer. So anyway, I got it on a tablet. Please be patient if I am kind of, fumbling around here trying to keep everything in front of me. I prefer hard copy. I guess I'm just getting old or whatever, but I like holding the paper in my hand so I can move it around and, see what's going on. So anyway, there's that. These stinking printer companies, if I ever get my hands on these guys, So that, and get a load of this. So I just got this happened last year, and I just got it resolved a couple of months ago, but I was going through some notes and found the other day, one of the most annoying things I have had happen in my life in the last year or two, easily, is I was flying to do a knife show. So for those of you who don't know, I'm also a professional knife maker, and I go to knife shows around the country sometimes to present my wares. They're like trade shows, but people, show up and buy. You get a chance to meet the people that you speak with online, whether it's via email or messages, social media, or like different forums and things like that. So anyway, they're pretty cool. They're interesting and fun. I like doing it. You get a chance to meet a lot of the people that you only know from a screen name and such. So anyway, I was flying down to Texas, and whenever I got there, I had paid for my car rental in advance. Whenever I go do these shows, I've usually got a good bit of gear. There's, table, displays and setups and just all kind of things, tablecloths and, cash box and all this other kind of stuff. So it's easier to have a car than it is to do like Uber and whatever else usually. So I had prepaid, and I'll keep this brief, but I prepaid for my car with a credit card, and everything was basically all set and ready to go. When I get down there, I won't say the name of the companies, it wound up getting resolved after an insane amount of time, but I don't like dragging people through the mud unless it's really, really absolutely necessary. But I go there to pick up my car, and I was supposed to be able to just actually not even to swipe anything, just go in there and grab my keys and go. Well, for some reason, they didn't have it ready, and then I had to go in and swipe my credit card again and put, for some reason, they wanted another card on file, even though my card was on file already. So I gave them the same card. It didn't work. And very long story short, I could not get a rental car that day. And I was left. They left me. I've got all these big suitcases and gear and all this crap with me. And they left. I was just wandering around the stinking the parking lot at this airport rental car, thing place, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Eventually, I wound up calling an Uber, and it wound up working out because that forced me to redesign my whole system and make it lighter and easier. And that's how I do things now. I wound up actually saving $200 or $300 about $200 actually in the overall thing. But what happened was nobody could figure out why I wouldn't take my card. I had used the card that morning, and then later that day, I could not use the card. So I wound up calling the credit card company, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the chip on that card died like 2 years ago. You should have got a replacement." And I'm like, I've been using this credit card for 2 years. How come, why did nobody ever notify me? I never got the replacement card. And I'm like, what is there something you can do? Can you speak with the people and just give them my card number and account? And the guy's like, no, sorry, man. And they did nothing for me. And the rental car place was no better at all. They were absolutely horrible. They called security on me while I was roaming around this parking lot structure trying to figure out what I was going to do and waiting on my Uber to get there. They called security on me. Security comes cruising up in one of those security, Jeeps or whatever it was. It wasn't a golf cart, but it was like some open Jeep thing, like the ones in Jurassic Park. And anyway, they come cruising up like, what's going on, man? I got all this gear and I'm wearing a cowboy hat. It's stinking, even though it was earlier in the year, it was stinking hot. I'm sweating buckets. And immediately, fortunately, the guy that was in charge of the two dudes had a brain and realized I wasn't there to cause some kind of problem. And I told them what happened and they offered to help me and everything. But I'm like, dude, I just want to get out of here. I am just sweating buckets. I haven't eaten since yesterday. And anyway, they were very good about it. But they told me the car rental place called security on me. So I don't know why they did that, but it was a nasty experience. I will never, ever deal with them again. Now, the best part of this, when I get back, and so of course I didn't have my credit card for the rest of the trip because the guy on the phone closed it out on me. Whenever he told me the chip was in, he's like, I got a new one in the mail. And I'm like, sir, how does that help me? I'm stuck 1,800 miles away from home, and I don't like to travel and put all this stuff on my debit card. Anyway, it was a mess. I didn't want to go through it again. But the credit card company, it took me 6 months to get my refund for the rental car back because the rental car company refused to refund my money. I don't to this day know why they were fighting it, but I wound up having to write this stinking long letter. I had to rewrite it like 6 times. They make you jump through these hoops, which in my opinion are just designed to make you give up on the whole thing and forget about it because it was ridiculous. I had to write the same letter every time. They denied it. And then after a certain number of tries, they're like, we're sorry, you've exceeded your time limit, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, I don't care about that. I used your credit card or your company's card to purchase goods and services, I guess in this case, that I never received. This is fraud. And finally, after like 6 months, I wound up just refusing to hang up the phone one day and escalated to some, who knows, it was probably just a regular person next to the original operator. And after like 30 seconds, she's like, oh yeah, this is ridiculous. Refunded my card. I got the email right over the phone that my card was refunded. The whole thing was done. But it was absolutely insane. It was like $394, I think is what it was. Ridiculous to fight that hard for it. But the rental car company refused to refund my money, even though they clearly admitted, I got the letter from them through the credit card company, that they did not render any services. So anyway, every time I think about it, it gets me all steamed up. So pardon me, we've used up a chunk of time. Let's get to it. We go to Southwest Airlines. And this is the actual headline from USA Today. Southwest tightens refund rules for plus-size passengers. So plus-size passengers on Southwest Airlines may soon find it harder to get reimbursed for their extra space. The airline long had a policy encouraging, quote-unquote, their words, not mine here, folks, customers of size to purchase 2 seats when they book a ticket and then apply for a refund for the second fare after they travel. I'm not going to read this whole story because, in my opinion, frankly, it's kind of poorly written. It twists and turns around. But basically, Southwest. I don't ever fly them. I don't think I've flown Southwest in probably 20 years. They don't go where I go out here in Oregon, or I never run into their flights on the thing whenever I buy them. Anyway, I guess what would happen is if you couldn't fit between two armrests, you were considered a plus size or a customer of size passenger, according to Southwest, and you would have to buy two tickets. Or if the flight wasn't fully booked, you could just kind of ride along. And as long as they didn't need that seat, they never even charged you for it. And if they did, they would usually refund it, apparently. I don't know. I read three different articles and none of them clearly spelled it out to me. I may just be dense. I don't know. Now, though, let me read this part. Plus size travelers now worry that I don't know why they don't just, well, we'll get to that. Never mind. Where the new policy is going to make their travel more complicated without really providing any benefit to Southwest in the long run. I'll tell you what the benefit is, guys. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the hassle of people that want to argue and fight over these either plus size, morbidly obese, fat, whatever you're going to call the people. And I'm sure some people do have medical conditions, but not all of them do. I'll give you a quick personal story. This is why I believe it's a hassle. They would just rather get away from it. I was on a flight a couple of years ago, and the flight attendant was leading me to my seat. I was running behind, either I was getting a coffee or I had to use the restroom before the flight or whatever. And she is leading me up to my seat. It was one of the last seats available. Way down the thing, and I could see, and so could she, that there was an absolutely enormous lady sitting next to me. Now, I'm not a huge guy, but I'm 6 foot, 220, 225, depending on what day of the week it is. Okay. This lady was already spilling over into my seat. There was no way. And I'm not trying to be mean or funny. I'm just telling you exactly what happened. She was spilling over into my seat. You couldn't even see the armrest that was going to be my left armrest because I had an aisle seat. And the stewardess or flight attendant, whatever we're supposed to say, she saw this. And fortunately, there just happened to be one of those exit row seats. She said, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and just take this seat right here? And it was only a couple of aisles or seats away from that lady. And the obese lady, I don't know why she would care, but she immediately saw what happened because everybody was already, boarded. It was fairly quiet. And she immediately was upset and disturbed by this. She started huffing and puffing, and I'm like, I don't even care. I sat down, and I just could not wait to get the drink service going so I could forget about this and move forward. But I'll guarantee you, we've seen videos on social media that these people that are in this situation that require two seats or they're right on the borderline, they're oftentimes, not always, they're oftentimes not easy to deal with. And if you're a company that provides this service, what would you rather do? If you could choose to not have to deal with that on a regular basis, wouldn't you do that? And if you could take steps to encourage people to use other airlines, wouldn't you do that so you could lessen your hassle? I would. I can't speak for Southwest, but I wouldn't want to deal with tons of angry fat people in planes. And you may say, Wilson, you're being a little harsh using the word fat. We don't say that anymore. It's 2025. This isn't 1988. Wait until you read the rest of this article. So, they got a letter from this gentleman named Jeff Jenkins, who is, I'm not making this up, he is the founder of Chubby Diaries. He said, it seems like a sneaky add-on from a policy that had been around for 20 plus years without much hitting the bottom line. I just hope consumers are aware of this change, and I wonder if plus-size people will skip out on flying with them because of not knowing if the flight is sold out or not. So that's his take on it. Let me read you another take from another activist group or organ. I don't know what everybody is today. Everybody's got a special name for what they do. But the long story short is previously the purchase of a second seat was recommended but not required on Southwest operated flights. Now, apparently, especially if it's a sold out flight, you are going to be required to purchase a second ticket if you can't fit between two regular armrests, and you may or may not get it refunded like they happened in the past. Now, we go to... I'm not making this up. Remember, don't get mad at me for using the word fat. Apparently, we're supposed to accept that. Okay. Tigress Osborne, Executive Director of the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. Their words, folks, not mine. The National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance said many people can't take the risk of Southwest denying them a refund. They can't afford to take that gamble, Osborne said. According to Tigress from the National Association of Advanced Fat Acceptance, we are hearing from a lot of people.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
About how this will literally mean they cannot travel by air anymore. So there you go, folks. You take that information and do with it what you want. None of that was my opinion. That was all straight from a USA Today article and a personal true anecdote. Pardon me while I get a sip here. Okay, let's just keep it moving and not get bogged down in the mire of obesity and nomenclature. Indiana woman faces federal charges for social media threats to disembowel President Donald Trump. According to Fox News, an Indiana woman is facing federal charges after allegedly making deadly threats against President Donald Trump via social media, including one in which she wanted to disembowel the commander-in-chief. For those of you who maybe English isn't your first language, to disembowel means to slice open and put your insides on the outsides, basically. Pretty graphic. Okay, this woman, Natalie Rose Jones, 50, of Lafayette, Indiana, is charged with threatening to take the life of, kidnap, yada, 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 the president. This is another really woundily written, however you want to put that, windingly written article. Kind of hard to extract all the details here, but she came to the attention of federal authorities when U.S. Secret Service agents found an Instagram user account, nath.jones. Remember, her name is Natalie with an H, Rose Jones, had posted threatening comments about Trump between August 2nd and 9th, according to the Justice Department. The user of that account called Trump a terrorist, referred to President Trump's administration as a dictatorship, and stated that Trump had caused extreme and unnecessary loss of life in relation to the coronavirus. The order also called for him to be removed from office. Okay, now, she allegedly wasn't done there. From August 6th to 15th, this account, nath.jones, allegedly continued to post threatening comments about Trump on Facebook. On August 6th, a post directed at the FBI states, allegedly, I am willing to sacrificially kill this POTUS by disemboweling him and cutting out his trachea with Liz Cheney and all the affirmation present. Folks, do you know how insane you have to be to say something like that? In my opinion, you have to be to say something like that on a social media post about the President of the United States, whether you like him or not, whether you voted for him or not. If you say that you want, maybe insane, I don't know, that's what I would call it. Maybe just mental problems, maybe just really angry. But when you talk about wanting to sacrificially kill Trump by disemboweling him and cutting out his trachea with Liz Cheney and all the affirmation present. Now, the affirmation, the T and the A, the affirmation, I don't know what that is. It's capitalized here in this group or in this sentence. So I'm guessing it's some sort of group or organization. I don't know, or I don't know what it is. But she wanted them and Liz Cheney to be present. On August 14th, a post directed to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said, Nath Jones, again, allegedly wrote, please arrange the arrest and removal ceremony of POTUS Trump. POTUS stands for President of the United States of America, President of the United States. For those of you that aren't in the States and don't keep up on our stuff over here, I don't blame you. POTUS Trump as a terrorist on the American people from 10 to 2 p.m. at the White House on Saturday, August 16th, 2025. She had the whole thing lined out when she wanted the removal ceremony and everything that she sent to the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Hegseth. Jones allegedly voluntarily agreed to an interview with the Secret Service during which she called Trump a terrorist and a Nazi, and later claimed that if she had the opportunity, allegedly, she would kill Trump at the compound if she had to, and that she had a bladed object, which she said was the weapon she would use to carry out her mission of killing the president. Wow. I mean, can you? This is. I'm going to say this briefly. We always remain politically neutral here at the Make It Out Alive, the MOA broadcast. But folks, put your feelings aside. Either way, from whether you like or dislike or support or don't support Trump, there is no denying that for the last several years, the media, especially here in the U.S., has demonized this man to the point where if he spits on the sidewalk, they're practically calling for his arrest and removal and impeachment and everything else. I don't even care most about what most of these politicians say, but it's insane when you watch the news, the one-sided slant they have and bias to a lot of this coverage. And so it's not hard to see where a lot more people have become radicalized to the point where they're talking about disemboweling and cutting out the trachea of a president for his crimes against the United States or whatever it was, coronavirus, this, that. I mean, this is crazy. And to put that stuff on social media, there is clearly some kind of problem there. That is, in my opinion, not a rational, sane thing to do. It certainly isn't legal. Let's put it like that. Wow. So anyway, the lady Jones allegedly denied having any present desire to harm the commander-in-chief, authorities said. She did allegedly confirm that she was the owner of the Facebook user account Nath Jones and that she had posted those threatening statements. So she's going to have some difficult times ahead of her legally. I would imagine she is I don't know if she's currently in custody or not. It didn't say that they were brought charges against her. I would imagine she's still in. I don't know. Maybe they let her bond out for that. You would think if you're threatening to kill the president, they might be a little more hesitant to bond you out. But who knows? Well, finally, a statement from the U.S. Secret Service: protecting the President of the United States is our highest priority, and every potential threat is addressed with the utmost seriousness, said Special Agent in Charge Matt McCool of the U.S. Secret Service's Washington Field Office. And no disrespect to Mr. McCool, but I did not make that name up. That is his name, Special Agent in Charge Matt McCool. So good for him. Okay, let me get a quick sip here, folks. My throat gets parched and beat up from all this talking I do on this show and other voice things. So we are going to continue with a brief MOA preparedness segment. Now, we cover a lot of news stories, and I obviously have a background in knife making, and so that, especially when it comes to like survival knives, and I also design and make outdoor gear, which you can find on gearconvoy.com. But so obviously the subject of knives is near and dear to my heart and something I spend a lot of time where I design and build and make knives by hand. I have them made by factory and so forth. I'm a very small outfit, but that's a big part of what I do for the last almost 15 years now. Okay, one of the things that comes up frequently is serrations, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's brief segment here. Serrations on knives, yes or no? Now, we've talked about this a number of times, but this continues to get emails and messages, and it comes up on forums and other places, social media, about serrations and so forth. Let me put it like this. In my opinion, a really good survival knife, you cannot possibly go wrong by having serrations on your survival knife, especially if they're not overly aggressive or whatever else. If they're like Spyderco, I love Spyderco serrations. I've used them for decades. Love them. They work great. There are other good ones out there. I'm not trying to leave anyone else out, but I'm just trying to give you an idea. If you look up, if you're not familiar with, look up Spyderco, Spyderco, Spyderco serrations, and you'll get an idea of what I mean. You don't have to have the whole blade serrated, but it's a great idea to have some sort of serrated portion of the edge, because if you are using this as a survival knife, this is a knife that is designed to be used when you are in a bad situation. Not every knife that's called a survival knife is really designed to be used in a quote-unquote survival situation. A lot of knives that are simply day-to-day EDC knives or work knives or hiking or backpacking or camp knives are referred to as survival knives. That's fine. It's more of a classification. Some would call it a marketing term. Some would say it's used to sell knives, but you have to use terminology. Just like if you go to a car dealership, there are SUVs. Not everybody uses those as a sports utility vehicle, but you have to be able to classify it. Do you want a sedan, a truck, so that people know how they can put you in a car when you go to a dealership? That's all it really is to me, as a classification. But a true survival knife, one that's meant to be used only in dire situations, there's a good chance you're going to be having to misuse and abuse that knife at least a little bit. And the problem with just a regular straight edge, a non-serrated edge, is once it gets dull, it is effectively or essentially worthless. You can't really cut cordage. You can pound it through something and do what's called batoning, where you place the edge of the knife into the surface you're trying to cut, and you pound on it with a stick or some type of improvised club. But other than that, once a straight edge, a non-serrated edge gets dulled, it's very worthless. And if you don't have a sharpening implement or the know-how or the time, you may only have one arm useful or working or left or who knows, it can be very difficult to use a straight non-serrated edge to cut things. A serrated edge gives you a couple of advantages. Number one, what you're doing is by having the serrations in the blade, like you see in a lot of steak knives, what you're effectively doing is lengthening the edge of the knife, because if you straightened out all those serrations, the knife would actually be longer. So you're giving yourself more cutting power by doing so. Secondly, you're also getting, especially depending on the type of serration design you have, you're adding teeth to the blade, the edge of the knife, so that even if the cutting edge itself gets dull, those teeth are going to rip and tear like a saw whenever you're trying to cut through things. And even if you can't effectively slice, you can saw through what you're trying to cut. So, there are actually one or two other things you could add, but we'll keep it to that for now. Serrations are very effective. Probably the number one reason guys don't like serrations is number one, and this is going to sound stupid, but I've had this conversation literally hundreds of times. A lot of guys don't like the way it looks. They like the way a nice straight, just like the Crocodile Dundee Bowie. A great looking knife, one of the most iconic movie knives of all time, but not a very practical knife for many situations at all. But a lot of guys love to buy and use, or at least act like they use, their big Bowie knives. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel cool. And I'm not knocking them. I do the same thing sometimes, especially when I was younger. I used to carry a 10-inch Bowie with me when I would go backpacking. And it was very effective and useful. But after a while, I got tired of carrying around this monstrous Bowie knife on the trail. And I found I was only using a small portion of it. So anyway, but guys like that look when they hold up their knife and they look at it and the firelight and the edge glints at them in the eye, with the firelight glinting on the edge, and they stare at this knife and it makes them feel like Rambo, and they're feeling all tough and everything else. And that straight edge just looks so sexy and deadly. That's how they like to feel about it. A lot of guys, not everybody, but a lot. The other main problem is most guys, and I can tell you this from literally hundreds of conversations over the years, they cannot sharpen the serrated portions of their knives. And I don't know why. It's not that hard. I'm going to have to take a break here in just a minute, but we'll get to it probably right before and after the break. But it's not that difficult to do. It's not much. In fact, if you have some skill, it's not any more difficult really than sharpening the straight edge portion of a knife. And in my opinion, any decent survival kit, now maybe not your mobile kit, but my mobile kits and my home kit and everything else, any decent survival kit and bag, get home bag, bug out bag, whatever were the flavor of the month word or terminology we're using this week or this month is, should have a serrated edge. Because if you have your straight edge blade for whatever you're using it for and it just gets beat up or dulled, because you can cut through a couple, if you ever planted trees, all you have to do is cut through a couple of those canvas bulbs and with all that grit and clay and dirt in there, and your edge is shot on a straight edge knife. Okay? So you want to have a serrated edge available so that if all else fails, you have something that can rip and tear and continue to do so long after your edge has faded. So let's go ahead and take a break. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about serrations and how to sharpen them. And then we're going to get into this lady who horrifyingly lost her arm in a lion attack when we get back. More Make It Out Alive with Sam Wilson after this.
This is Dave. Dave makes the tastiest burritos in town. But
nobody knows I exist. I'm serving culinary masterpieces to my mom and a raccoon named Dennis.
Then came Jenny.
Dave, have you tried radio?
Radio, isn't that for traffic reports and late-night alien talk?
It's also for thousands of people who don't know you exist.
Huh?
Yet, radio is affordable, reliable, and it works. Not instant burrito fame, but people start showing up kind of results.
So I partnered with Gold Country Radio, and now people know I exist. I've got new customers, catering calls, and Dennis brought a possum. I think they're dating.
I told you. Radio gets your business heard.
Next up, we a second table, maybe indoor seating.
Want to get your business heard? Visit goldcountryradio.org and click Contact to get started. Radio, small budget, big reach, real results.
You're listening to the MOA broadcast with Sam Wilson. Will you make it out alive? All right, folks, and we are back from a break. It is time for more MOA broadcast with your host, Sam Wilson. Okay, folks, sometimes you have to ask yourself, are we living in a simulation or not? We'll get back to
Lowe's knows that no matter your paint project, saving is at the top of your list. That's why when you shop today, you can buy one, get one free select Valspar and HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams one-coat coverage interior paints via rebate. Shop these deals in-store or online today at Lowe's. We help, you save. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. Offer valid 8/21 through 9/3.
the serrations on survival knives here in just a minute. But during the break, I had a little snack, and I'm just checking the headlines. And I read probably easily hundreds of news stories each week as part of staying informed and preparing for this show and trying to give you the very best content that I can here on the Make It Out Alive broadcast. And some of these that pop up on your feed, like on social media, whether it's X, which is Twitter, or TikTok or the others, you look at this stuff and you have to question your sanity sometimes. Is this really happening? Like, what is are we living in a simulation where, I guess that comes from, the Matrix, where the people they're basically in pods, and so they're kept docile and can be enslaved, mentally or psychologically or whatever. Anyway, that's a whole other story, but you got to wonder, is this actually really happening? So I'm going to read you a headline. Now, don't worry, folks. Here at the MOA broadcast, we try and keep things very PG. Occasionally, we'll dip into PG-13 territory, but we don't get overly explicit or graphic. But this is an actual headline out of KTLA.com, which is in California, Burbank. Okay. Just pay attention. Here's their words, not mine. Serial butt sniffer arrested again in Burbank. And that's not cereal as in, breakfast cereal. Obviously, it's cereal like in serial killer, SERIAL. No killing, but a serial butt sniffer arrested again in Burbank. We'll just jump through this briefly to give you the highlights because when I see this stuff, what do we do with this information? Where are these people coming from? And why are they doing these things? So anyway, again, pardon me, I'm trying to use the tablet, and I'm having to use the computer a little bit more since I don't have everything printed out as I normally would, so I may be a little clumsy. But a man who has been arrested multiple times now for sniffing women's... This is a real story from a news website. And a lot of people picked this up. It went viral on like TikTok or something, I read. Okay, a man who has been arrested multiple times for sniffing women's rear ends while in public was arrested again this week for the same crime. I'm going to probably be pronouncing his name wrong, but whatever. Kelly's Karen Crowder, 38, apparently a male, was arrested Tuesday by officers from the Burbank Police Department at the Walmart located in the Empire Center Shopping Center on Victory Place. Police had originally responded to the nearby Nordstrom rack in the same shopping center for a report of a suspicious man loitering in the women's department. When they arrived, they had been, I'll try and keep this brief, we got a lot of other stuff to cover, but they were informed he had left the department store and he was located a short while later at, you guessed it, the Walmarts across the parking lot. And they show a picture of this guy, I don't know if he's the one that allegedly that did it, okay. He has these ears that look like like Shrek. This guy, I'm telling you what, you look at him and you know you got there's going to be some issues. These ears look just like some kind of a cartoon character. No offense, Mr. Kellis Kreider, I don't know, 37. Ooh, okay. The officers used the security camera to follow him as he allegedly followed a female customer into the women's department. They observed the man allegedly crouch behind the woman and I don't know how I'm supposed to say this with a straight face. He crouched behind the woman and engaged in lewd behavior by inappropriately sniffing her buttocks. Which leads to the inevitable question, is there an appropriate way to sniff a woman's buttocks in public at Nordstrom Rack? Police confronted the man in the Walmarts and eventually detained him. It was later revealed that he was Kelly's Crowder, a resident of Glendale and a registered sex offender. Oh, man. He's currently on active parole and has a documented history of similar arrests for similar crimes. He made national headlines, and there's where I heard from him, in August 23 for committing the same act on a woman at a Barnes & Noble in Burbank, which was caught on video and led to a viral TikTok post. Okay, we're going to leave that and get back to more important things, but I couldn't resist when I saw that. I'm like, well, we got to include this in the show. Okay, we were talking about inappropriately sniffing a woman's buttocks. Can you imagine if you're the officer trying to write this police report, or you're the news reporter trying to make this into a PG or PG-13 report that you can put out over the air? Okay, I need a sip. Okay. Now, we were talking about serrations on knives and how to... the core of it. If you recall, one of the primary reasons that a lot of guys, according to my opinion and my experience, that a lot of guys don't like serrations, we discussed the fact that it doesn't look like a Crocodile Dundee Rambo knife. They want that, that mirror polished edge that just gleams and glints in the firelight around the campfire at night. And I'm not making fun of those guys that love Crocodile Dundee and Rambo. That's me too. Rambo is one of the reasons, the Rambo knives are one of the reasons that I make the knives that I do. So I'm there with you, but I have to laugh at myself too. It's hilarious. That being said, I do appreciate and enjoy serrations. And I'll tell you a very brief anecdote. We got to keep this moving. When I used to work in a job years ago, going back, almost 20 years now, where I was dealing with, I was doing a lot of outdoor work and utilities work, okay? And cutting a lot of abrasive and aggressive materials and cordage. I found very quickly that my high-end steels, it didn't matter how good the steel was, how hard it was, how thin the edge was, and so forth. They all dulled very, very quickly when cutting things like mule tape and canvas that had been drugged through the silt and the clay and the soil through the ground while installing utilities, okay, in neighborhoods and homes and so forth. So what happened is, no matter how sharp, that knife could be literally shaving sharp in the morning. After 2 or 3 cuts, after going through that clay and that silt with all that, abrasive media in the ground and the dirt, they were dull and they were literally useless. Okay. So I took it was one of those Glock field knives, which are absolutely fantastic. I would never want one for fine cutting because they got a fat edge and so forth, but they've got great serrations that would actually cut plastic and wood pretty aggressively. Considering what it was, it wasn't designed as really a saw to be, cutting down plastic and wood, but it did the job pretty admirably for what it was. And I took, in fact, a buddy of mine helped me. His name doesn't matter. We'll get to that later some other time. Took like a bastard file and just cut in serrations because the steel was relatively soft, which is kind of what you want. It makes it very easy to resharpen. The softer the steel, generally the easier it is to resharpen, the less it's going to hold that edge. But, it's easier to resharpen in the field. So we actually put serrations on that knife. And those serrations would sit there and cut and cut and cut long after the primary straight edge was dulled. So that was a lesson that was impressed upon me very heavily, that serrations do have a place. Whenever your straight edge is dulled, and again, sometimes like if we were planting trees or whatever else and restoing the landscaping and stuff, you could cut through like those canvas bulbs and things one or two times, one or two decent cuts. That edge was gone. It was just gone because of how abrasive the soil was. So the value of serrations was made very, very clear to me. This is the easiest way probably to sharpen your serrations. Find yourself a chopstick or one of those bamboo skewers or whatever that is fairly similar to the radius of the serration that you have on your knife. It is not an exact science. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll kind of scratch up your serration a little bit more if it doesn't match pretty closely. But if it's a using knife, who really cares? Take that chopstick or that bamboo skewer, and you're going to want to wrap some nice thin, preferably wet and dry, 320 grit. You could use 220, but that's pretty aggressive. 320 or 400 will do a fantastic job. Around one or two times around that chopstick or that skewer, and then just glide that serration. You'll have to find what works for you, whether pushing or pulling or both works for you. And you can even put a little bit of like glass cleaner, whether it's Windex or the knockoff like dollar store Windex. It doesn't really matter. Just something that has a little bit of lubricant or a little bit of slip in there to help carry away those metal particles as you're sharpening. Does a great job to sharpen that edge up. Okay, so again, take a chopstick, wrap some 2 or 320 grit or 400 grit, 320, 400 grit sandpaper around there, cut it into little strips, like 1-inch wide strips. Tear it is fine. You don't have to cut it. And then wrap it one or two times around that chopstick or that bamboo skewer, and you will have a great device for sharpening those serrations. And then you just strop it, whether on a leather strop, a power strop, or even on your jeans if you know what you're doing. Look up videos on stropping edges. It's very easy, and you will be able to maintain your serrations extremely easily. It doesn't have to be a shaving edge on those serrations. You can get it there very easily, but if you're not as skilled yet, don't worry. As long as it will slice through paper or cordage, it works. That's the main thing. And do not underestimate the cutting power of good serrations, especially in a survival, scenario / situation / kit. Okay, that's serrations. We're going to move on. We go to Australia. A 50-year-old woman loses her arm in a horrifying lion attack at a popular Australian zoo. This is coming to us from NDTV. Now, I got to paraphrase this one because I want to get to the MOA, the Make It Out Alive preparedness segment coming up next. And if I don't keep this moving, I'm not going to have enough time. Long story short, this poor lady, who was a 50-year-old school teacher, was at Darling Downs Zoo on Sunday. This is a couple of weeks ago, actually, when the incident occurred. Long story short, she is the sister-in-law of the zoo's owner, something Robinson, no disrespect to him. Where is his name? Does it say somewhere? Yada, yada, yada. Okay, whatever. I can't find it. The zoo owner's sister-in-law, she had been coming to the zoo for like 20 years. She was a friend of the zoo. She was a family member and a friend of the family of the zoo owner. And she would also take photographs and produce a calendar for the zoo. This lady had all the best intentions. She was a good gal from everything that I can read here. We don't know exactly what happened, but she was in the private area where the zoo staff and the keepers and stuff are. Somehow, and this is like outside of business hours apparently, somehow she got close enough to the cage and this lioness grabbed a hold of her arm and drug it inside of the cage. And it doesn't say whether it was partially or fully denuded or just tore up. She wound up losing her arm. Okay, I don't know if it said a left or right arm, whatever. Grabbed her by one arm and caused severe damage to it. And it must have happened because she was close to the enclosure. Not trying to put blame on her. This is we're not making fun of this lady at all. This is a horrible story. But the good news is she survived, okay, so far. At no stage, according to the zoo, did this animal leave its enclosure, and there was no risk at all to staff members or members of the public. The statement continued. Just this one lady who, she may have just got a little close. You got to realize, folks, wild animals are different than domestic animals. In one part of the story, it mentions that the lioness may have just been playing and didn't realize, what was going to happen or what did happen. Either way, wild animals are not like pets or domestic animals. They play for keeps. They don't know any other way. Okay, you may see wild animals that get slightly or mildly domesticated and will play with humans and be friendly. That's an, I hate to use the word aberrational, but that's not a normal behavior for them. they play for keeps. That's the only way they can stay alive. That's how they survive. So who knows what happened? Again, I'm not trying to put any blame on anyone. It's a tragedy. She lost her arm. Now, the good news, this is what I found interesting, was they had a good first aid kit and a very quick on their feet first aid member of their staff. Where to go? Let's see. Robinson's wife, that's the zoo owner's wife, and a carnivore keeper were nearby, and they credited a second keeper, well-trained in first aid, with saving his sister-in-law's life. She actually took, this is a quote from the owner's wife, she took my wife's, they got that confused because they used she twice. It's a man and a woman. Anyway, the quote is, the zookeeper who is trained in first aid took the woman's leather belt off and applied a tourniquet. Very quickly, the first aid was there. We wrapped her up in a thermal blanket, and paramedics locally were here very, very quickly indeed. So, again, they weren't exactly clear on how and why this happened because apparently no one was directly with her when it happened. But the end result is she was, helicoptered away to this, let's see, where was it? I don't know, the Brisbane's Princess Alexandra Hospital for surgery and is now in stable condition. Again, this was actually from 2 or 3 weeks ago. I want to make sure I got it into the show. There's the train in the background. The good news is this. This is the part that I really appreciate out of the story. They're investigating the incident, yada, yada, yada. Nobody else saw the attack take place. And I guess there were no cameras. I have no idea. But the zoo owner has said the animal will not be put down or punished in any way. And I've mentioned this before. When it comes to alligators, bears, and other wild animals, I understand the rationale behind. I'm a pretty logical person. I'm not what I would consider an overly emotional person. But I do hate it when animals do what they were built to do, and some human gets in the way. And I'm not criticizing this lady or anything negative against her, but then it costs some animal their life. Like we had a story a couple weeks ago about some folks that got, into it with some alligators. They wound up killing like 3 or 4 alligators to find out where the remains were inside. Well, I don't know. For me personally, I don't know why we do that. I get if you're one of the people that feels like we want to kill that gator dead. I want retribution. If that was my family member, I want them dead. I get that. For me personally, I haven't had that happen to me. I've never had a family member killed by a wild animal that I can think of off the top of my head. I don't think if it was something like a random occurrence in nature, I would want that to happen. We're usually inserting ourselves into their environment, and I hate it when they do what they do by instinct, and then they wind up getting killed or hunted down for it. So whatever. The good news is, according to the owner of the zoo, that's not going to happen in this case, so I'm happy. Okay, before we get to our next clip, real quickly, I want to do a classic movie spotlight. I've been trying to work this in. We've actually had some good feedback on this segment. I have mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of most modern TV shows and movies and stuff. They're overly polished. They don't feel real anymore. Everybody has perfect teeth, perfect skin, perfect hair. Even at like 58 years of age, these people look like they were pumped out of some kind of, factory. And they never sweat. They never get hurt. They never have bad breath. It doesn't look real. And if you look at movies from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, people looked real. I mean, it was raw. And, I'm not saying overly graphic or gratuitously violent, but you wanted that realistic, that raw feel. I do. I appreciate that in a movie or a TV show. So let's get to it. Mr. Majestic. Now, this is a Charles Bronson film. He was the lead star in this. If you have ever read books, I don't read a ton of fiction, but a couple of years ago, I went on this tear where I read a bunch of fiction. I read several. Well, it was easily dozens, if not hundreds of books over the course of several months, about 14 months. And one of my favorite authors out of that time period was Elmore Leonard. And I got to keep this moving, but Elmore Leonard, if you have never heard that name, Elmore Leonard, look him up. Guaranteed you have watched movies that were based on his screenplays or his books. He was extremely prolific, especially during like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even until now. I don't think he's with us, but I could be wrong. I have to double check that. Don't take my word on that. But let me tell you some of the books that he has done or scripts that have become Hollywood movies. Let's go to the computer here. Okay, this is Mr. Majestic. We'll get to that in just a second. Here's I'll list some of the highlights. The Big Bounce, 52 Pickup, Stick. That was a great Burt Reynolds film if you've never seen it. Out of Sight, Get Shorty, Be Cool, Rum Punch, Kill Shot, Freaky Deaky, 310 to Yuma, Hombre, Valdez is Coming, and Joe Kidd, along with a bunch of others. He was extremely prolific and very good at things just keeping right straight to the point and keep the action moving. So, long story short, Mr. Majestic, this had Charles Bronson as the lead character. Vince Majestic was his name. He was a watermelon farmer. Just seemed like a regular, average, everyday dude. And then the big bad guy, the heavy that was against him was Al Lettieri, who played Frank Rinda. You may know him as Sollozzo from the Godfather film. And he played this absolute savage in this film. It was a great movie. You also might recognize him from The Getaway, opposite Steve McQueen. He was one of the guys who assisted in the robbery along with Bo. What was Bo's last name? I apologize. I can't remember his name. He was the crazy blonde dude. And he also played a similar kind of character in, what was it called? Not Professional Killers. Anyway, great film. Bo something or other. He's not the point of this. Al Lettieri, he played the main bad guy opposite them. And basically, this guy is he winds up being a former military guy, but he's just trying to run a watermelon farm what do they call it? Watermelon farm, whatever, in rural Colorado. And through a long series of twisted and turned events, he winds up getting into it with this mob hitman, and it winds up being a duel to the death. I'm not going to ruin it for you. You can probably imagine how it goes, though. But it was a great movie, really fun. And one of the things I like about these films is Bronson in particular. These are guys that can play very minimalist roles. They don't have to be constantly talking. They don't need tons of gadgets and toys. They don't need lots of anything. I bet these movies for their time were probably remarkably cheap, just like Hard Times, Joe Kidd, and several others. As far as outside of the talent pay, there wasn't much in the way of special effects. It was very simple, but it was engaging. The dialogue was simple and straightforward, and you just enjoyed these films a lot. They're not what I would call high entertainment, but they were very, very fun. I like them. Hard Times is one of my favorite films. I talked about that in the past episode. So anyway, check it out. If you haven't seen it, it's Mr. Majestic. And Majestic is spelled Majestyk, I believe. It came out in, 1974. Okay. The Killer Elite. That was the film with the blonde guy, Bo. I can't remember his last name. He was also in another great film. What was it called? The Wild Bunch. He gets killed in a lot of these films. But he plays a great wild dude. His name is Bo, blonde guy. Anyway, he wasn't the main dude. Does it list his name here? It doesn't. He doesn't make the cut. Okay, so that's our classic film spotlight there, classic movie spotlight, Mr. Majestic. Check it out. And again, the other thing I like about a lot of these films, folks, is these are easily PG films you can watch with the whole family. Very, very little in the way of profanity, and the violence is pretty tame. Nothing like the gratuitous violence that we see today with the excessive blood and the explosions of blood and everything else. You can watch these with the family. The sex and stuff like that is very, very mild, if at all. They're easily PG films. You can watch them with everyone. So, it's trying to kind of a focus we try and keep here on the MOA broadcast. All right, now want to get into this. Saturday night we had let's read the highlight first. Saturday night's high tide and additional rain boosted Charleston flood risk. This is coming to us out of Charleston, South Carolina. They had 10 inches of rain over the past 24 hours. I got to jump right into this, causing basically flash flooding conditions. We're basically dovetailing this with our segment a couple of weeks ago about being prepared. How long could you go if everything, went downhill today or tomorrow in form of a natural disaster? Now, we had several natural disasters literally from coast to coast. That's Charleston, South Carolina. I printed out a list here. They're going to be very brief in the details, but in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic storms, late July to August 1st, 2025, the emergency situation lasted from hours to a day, and people needed flashlights, water, and access to charging and batteries and electricity. The Kentucky flash flooding, April 2 to 3, 2nd to 3rd, 2025, lasted for 2 to 3 days to potentially weeks, based on or depending on where you were and where you were located, how far outside of major cities you were located. They needed water, food, sanitation, first aid, shelter. We had Hurricane Helene impact the Southeast in September 2024. This was easily several days to weeks and possibly months for some people. They needed medical supplies, potable water, readiness for extended outage as far as power, water, sewage, and everything else. July 4th to 5th, 2025, we had Central Texas flash flooding. This was the Guadalupe and San Gabriel rivers. Flash flood, we had fatalities. There were 20 inches of rain in just hours. The Guadalupe River rose 29 feet in 45 minutes. That's equivalent to 4 months of usual rainfall in that short 45-minute to several hour period. Okay, the point is this. We're not trying to scare people. We're not trying to make you feel, you got to go out and buy some magic pill. I don't even sell these kind of supplies. The point is, if we go back to our chart that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, we're going to read this briefly. According to FEMA and Red Cross, when it comes to food, most U.S. households have only 3 days of food on hand. A lot of this is perishable, meaning it's in the refrigerator or wherever else. It's going to go bad very quickly, and short-term staples. 70% of U.S. households do not store more than a week's worth of non-perishable foods. Water. Okay. The average home, the average person does not store any emergency water outside of what they may have in a few bottles in the refrigerator or on the shelf. Okay? Most households, this is coming from, again, FEMA and Red Cross, depend entirely on municipal supply and bottled water use. In a grid-down scenario, people run out of safe water in 1 to 2 days. Power and fuel. Fewer than 15% of American homes own a generator. Less than 10% own or keep fuel reserves. Refrigerated food begins to spoil after 4 hours without power. Okay, folks, if you've ever seen, I've talked about this before, the rest of the movie may or may not be accurate, but look at the movie World War Z. PG-13 movie. It's not overly graphic or anything, especially in the beginning, in my opinion, for anybody that the PG-13 rating would apply to. Look at what happens very quickly when people realize things are going down. They hit, and I've seen this happen at local stores when we have snowstorms. Obviously, it wasn't a zombie outbreak, don't get me wrong, but at local stores, whenever we know we have a storm or a fire or a power outage coming, a lot of the staples are gone in minutes to hours. Okay? If you wait until you're in the middle of that scenario to prepare, you're going to be in serious trouble. And you're going to be dependent on the government, whether or not they decide to show up or not and help you out. Okay? Simple staples like rice, some canned goods and so forth can be added to each shopping trip for like $5, $8, $10 per shopping trip. Every time you go to the store, once a week, every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever it is, you can add a pound of rice, a 5-pound bag of rice, a couple of canned goods, and some bottles of water very, very cheaply. You can get like a 30 or 40 pack of bottled waters for like $5 at the Walmarts. So just keep that in mind, folks. If you wait, it'll be too late. I don't sell this stuff. I'm not trying to move that or scare you. You can get this stuff yourself locally, a lot of it from grocery stores. We'll go into more supplies next week. Now we go on to our final story today, and that brings us down to Pensacola, Florida. I'll read the headline and get right into it. It's not that long, and we'll keep this brief and to the point. Woman arrested for exposing herself and blocking traffic outside Waffle House, according to WKRG, not WKRP, Pensacola, Florida. The woman's name, Freedom Ryder Zobrist, and she looks exactly how you would think she looks, folks. Freedom Ryder, R-Y-D-E-R, Zobrist, was arrested Monday outside a Waffle House on Pensacola Boulevard after the restaurant manager said she exposed herself and danced in the parking lot. Again, this is Pensacola, Florida. The manager told deputies Zobrist arrived early that morning, and because of her behavior, he asked her to leave. She left, but returned around noon, cursing and threatening to get a gun and shoot the manager and everyone else in the restaurant. She then walked outside, pulled down her pants, exposed her sexual organs, and started dancing around the parking lot, according to the arrest report. The manager says she then approached him and tried to grab his genitals. The man said he tried to block her, and she licked She licked him on both sides of his face. Now that's a power move right there. Witnesses say they were blocked in and couldn't leave because of her dancing, and she was very loud, causing a disturbance, along with the alleged sexual encounter. She has been charged with lewd and indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, battery, and assault. Folks, that reminds us of the unofficial Waffle House slogan, "It's 2 a.m. There's still time to make one more bad decision." All right, folks, remember, don't wait to prepare until you have an emergency. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.